once again, sir. We now come to another very interesting keynote presentation, the leadership keynote, disrupting the cybersecurity status quo. And this session is brought to you by Palo Alto. And our keynote speaker is Mr. KP Unnikrishnan. He's the Senior Director and Head of Marketing, Asia Pacific and Japan, Palo Alto Networks. Before I invite him onto the stage, I'll take this privilege to say a few words of introduction. Mr. KP Unnikrishnan is responsible for the company's growth strategy in the Asia Pacific and Japan region. He runs strategic initiatives across the region to help industry, academia, and government organizations be more cyber savvy and improve their cyber prowess to have a breach prevention-based infrastructure. Mr. Unni has worked in the technology sector for close to 24 years, including management roles in marketing, strategy, partnership, and sales. Prior to Palo Alto Networks, Mr. Unni was the APEC Marketing Director of Brocade Communications, responsible for executing the company's strategy across the region with a key focus on growing the IP business. Before joining Brocade, Mr. Unni spent over 10 years in Sun Microsystems in marketing, teleweb, sales, and partnering leadership roles. In his last stint at Sun Microsystems as corporate director and part of the executive leadership team, he was responsible for building the company's brand and demand across the emerging markets region, that is Latin America, Central Europe, Middle East, Africa, Greater China, and India. Prior to Sun Microsystems, Mr. Unni led the marketing operations for Parametric Technology Corp. India. In addition, Mr. Unni is in the APEC Advisory Board of the CMO Council and immediate past chairman of the Cloud Computing Chapter Singapore Infocom Technology Federation. And a huge round of applause to you, sir, as I welcome you on stage, and the stage is yours now.
Thank you. I agree with Dr. Trehan. We should cut this down drastically to reduce this. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity. I have seen ABP and Infocom up and close for the last decade and a half, and I want to really congratulate the team to see such a phenomenal growth. It's not only something that stands out in this part of the region, but it's obviously known. I'm based in Singapore, and I hear a lot of folks in South Asia talk about this event, so big congratulations to ABP and Infocom to pull this through. What I'm going to take you through for the next 20-odd minutes is to really set you thinking on how you should be looking at cybersecurity. And this is not a technology presentation, this is not a vendor presentation, because you've heard a lot of new developments, the way industry is evolving, the way technology is moving from Ben in the morning. You heard Dr. Trehan a little while back. But what is important that we would all realize is things are changing. If we look ourselves as what we do as a consumer, if we look at ourselves as a student, if you look at ourselves as somebody who's doing as basic thing as shopping, you have a basic level of trust in what you're doing with regards to the technology. You trust your bank, your money is safe. You trust the healthcare folks because everything that they're doing is linked back to technology, which is going to take care of you. You trust your government because they are set up technology which is taking care of you as a country. And the underlying factor over here is trust. And the day that trust is going to be broken, everything is going to fall apart. If I tell you right now, there's been a massive breach into your bank and all your money is being pulled out, trust me, each one of you guys will just run out of the room to check which bank that is. You wouldn't even care if I have named the bank or not, because that's the underlying trust that you have. And the important part is this is evolving and this is becoming better and better. But the important aspect to that is how do you look at how technology is affecting your life and how you're going to safeguard this. Now, if you take a step back in terms of being an enterprise organization, things have really evolved in the last couple of years, right? I mean, you've seen a huge amount of benefit with technology coming in with the SaaS, PaaS application. Your social consumerization has changed radically. Cloud and virtualization is here to stay. You know, every organization is empowering and looking at organizations and individuals using mobility and BYOD. But what this also means is it's opening up an attack surface for the adversary. And we're not even talking about the consumer part of it yet. And this is the challenge that organizations and individuals have to understand. And it's pretty easy for us to sit back and say, oh, my company is going to take care of it, or my government is going to take care of it, or my industry is going to take care of it. That's not the case. It's a unified responsibility or a shared responsibility that each one of us will have to address this. And that's the reason which I'm using the statement of disrupting cybersecurity status quo, because if you're looking at how secure you were as close as 2 years back, you will not be that secure 2 years from today, maybe not even as secure 2 days from today. So we, as an industry, collective set of citizens, need to be constantly challenging ourselves to make sure all the great technologies that's available for you from a consumer, from a bank, from a healthcare, etc., some of the stuff, funky things that Ben spoke about today morning, is all being safeguarded as you consume it. And this is going to be a fundamental way or difference that we have to look at each one of us in the industry. Now, when we see a lot of the folks in the industry, they understand that, but what they want to do is they want to do break fixes. It's all about trying to fix everything. Oh, I see tomorrow there's an intrusion into my organization, I'm going to put an IPS over there. If I see something is happening at the endpoint, I'm going to stick something together over there. The problem with that is it's like if you look at your old 2G phones where you stick a camera onto it and you stick a whole bunch of other technologies. That's how security is being looked at by a lot of organizations. And the problem to that is that's obviously not working. And these are some of the statistics that we see on a regular basis, and it's staggering. I mean, it's sometimes scary because you wonder, oh gosh, what is happening to the industry when you see some of these statistics coming out of it. The positive part to that is there's a whole bunch of other organizations who are not getting affected and obviously doing the right things. And what also happens when we speak to a lot of the folks in this part of the world, the unanimous reaction is, you know what, that's happening in the West. Or that's happening in, not in my country. That's not happening in my industry. We did a survey last year in India with the top CIOs and CISOs in the region to understand what is their cybersecurity prowess. And some of it, while we understood, some of it is also scary. And the point I like to highlight over here is the mindset and the awareness is increasing, which is fantastic, but then it links back to a big investment on point products. Cybersecurity is not a point product. You're not going to be safe when your desktop is taken care of. You're not going to be safe just because your mobile is being taken care of, because today's adversaries are smart. They're not just individuals, and I'll talk about that a little bit differently later. These are technologies. There's a lot of AI even at the cyber attack part of it. There's a lot of machine learning that's happening. So just by putting a bunch of people and some point product technologies, if you think you are secure, that's grossly mistaken. And again, this is, as I said, some of the statistics that we filled out. A lot of people are putting now focus teams driving towards cybersecurity, 95%, which is good. But then I question, what are those 5% organizations? And by the way, this is a survey that's done with some of the top conglomerates in India. 5% of the organizations don't even have a cybersecurity department. Now, that's scary. You mean to say you're doing business with somebody who's not even taking care of your part of your interest. So these are things that we see is becoming a critical aspect of the organizations. And we, as people who are in the space, spend a lot of time trying to educate organizations. It's not about having a technology conversation. It's about starting at the board level. It's about making sure the board is asking the questions to the executive management team, what are you doing on cybersecurity? Because gone are the days where the cybersecurity, where there was a breach, and this would get delegated down to the IT department. Today, CEOs' jobs are at stake. The PR aspect of the organization is unfathomable. The financial impact is even more crazy. And if we are not able to understand all that right at the top and drill it down to every part of the organization, this is not going to work. It is a mathematical problem. I don't know if you folks would have heard this. The cyber attack industry is $1 trillion. $1 trillion. It's bigger than the drug mafia in the world. If you look at the amount, and Ben spoke about some of the spamsters that he went and interviewed in some parts of Africa, it is important for them to constantly make money. That is how they're growing. Today, you can go to the dark web and you can buy a cyber attack breach kit at $53, $53.50. You want customer support? Pay $10 more. You want somebody to help you, professional services? Pay $12 more. So in less than $100, you are able to breach and bring down any organization who doesn't have a proper cybersecurity. This is why we link it back to we as an industry are always doing a catch-up. And this is scary because they are always a step ahead of us in terms of the way these guys are attacking. Now, when I say these guys, it could be a threat nation. There are a lot of them. It could be a threat adversary. It could be a criminal. It could be a kid sitting in a college dorm playing around with some new bugs and bots. And it is critical that we as an organization and as an industry and as a country are always thinking a step ahead. Because till we fix the other part of the problem in terms of the financial impact, this is not going to change. And I'm not going to get into the technicalities of these, but this is a very bare minimum area of how an organization would look. Now, if you look at some of the earlier breaches that have happened, and you heard one which was last week, the one a couple of weeks before that, do they not have cybersecurity? Absolutely, they do. But the approach and the fundamental way of looking at cybersecurity is different. What I'm leading to is things like this. We've had conversations with some leading organizations when we talk to them about, and this is where the sales aspect comes in, do you have cybersecurity? What's your cybersecurity posture? Or I have a compliance team. They've asked me, do I have a firewall? Tick, I have a firewall. Your firewall could be 20 years old, which is very good for IP-based port protocol blocking. Not today, when your adversary could be doing something out of a mobile place. Volumes and alerts. When you look at some of the large breaches that have happened, it breaches in one part of the organization, that organization, or one part of the group, those send out alerts to every other part of the group. Now, this is manual. One department does not know what's happening in the other department. An adversary gets into the network, creates a command and control cell, goes dormant for about 6 months, suddenly wakes up and starts exfiltrating the data. A lot of organizations do not know about that because that group or that technology is not talking to the other technology. And the technology vendors are equally to be blamed. Unlike your PC or your desktop where you talk about iOSs working together or technologies working together, as a technology vendor in the cybersecurity space, we do not share data. We share threat intelligence, which is through Cyber Threat Alliance, but we do not share data because, end of the day, our data is our own. And that links back to a problem because if an intrusion happens, the endpoint technology does not understand that. Or if intrusion happens through a cloud, your network data does not understand that. And this is critical. And today what also happens is once you realize there's a problem, you suddenly start throwing a bunch of human beings to go fix that problem. It's highly, highly manual. Statistics show there is, by 2020, there will be a dearth of 3.5 million cybersecurity professionals. If you're a bank, are you going to be investing into 50,000 cybersecurity professionals, or are you going to be investing into what your core competency is? So this is definitely not the way organizations need to look at it. I want to take a couple of minutes to show you something over here. We, as moral owners of the industry, we kind of get worried sometimes, many times when we see the breaches, because the first question is, oh my gosh, I hope that's not my customer. And fortunately, many a times they're not. Then the second time is we get worried because when a breach happens, a CEO will call their CISO or a CIO and say, I hope we are safe. And unfortunately, many of them cannot put their neck on the block and say, are they safe? And this is an example of something that we did with a leading bank in Southeast Asia. I've covered the names because it's obviously not respectful. But what we did was, it's called a security lifecycle review. It's, for a lack of a better word, it's a security health assessment of your organization. We come in, we do a kind of a POC, and we want to make sure that the organization understands what's running on the network. I'm going to jump through some of these things, but these are the kind of reports that come out. I don't know how clear this is. The first line says it gives you the first alert. There are applications that's running on your network that can lead to risk. we start pulling that out. Then the second thing that we tell you is there's a control and command leak possible. Through this part of your department or an organization, you could potentially have somebody getting into your organization and exfiltrating data. It also tells you all the kind of potential vulnerabilities. It maps to what's happening outside the industries and say, OK, these are things that's sitting in your organization. What it also does is, and this is where it starts getting murky, we start seeing FTP data. We start seeing download analysis. We, in fact, even found an area, there was a specific app that was being used, and this is a bank. Why would a bank want to use an unidentifiable app? We figured out, we did a Google search, my technical team did a Google search, and we figured out that was an app that's used to camouflage your surfing patterns. Now, this is where it gets scary. This is a bank. There's a department or a bunch of people who are using apps to camouflage their surfing pattern. Then when you start drilling it further down, you see a huge amount of data that's moving on file sharing. What file sharing would you be wanting to do outside your organization? And if you're doing those file sharing, what are you sending outside your organization, right? And then it starts getting even more murkier. I don't know how clear this is on the screen. Where is the biggest traffic happening? Keep in mind, this is a bank. This is in South Asia. The highest traffic in that bank is the first site, adult porn. And you heard Ben talk about this today. Technology is important, and the statement that he used is technology being accessible to pornography. Well, unfortunately, you don't want to use that example in a bank. And this is how we start drilling down into everything that the organization would do. And this is when we tell the company, OK, this is the problem that you have, and these are the kind of reports that you need to take to your board and say, you have a massive risk at hand. Because if you do not fix it now, you're already at a massive problem with regards to all kinds of breaches that's getting onto your network. So to kind of summarize a bunch of things, we have to look at it very, very differently. Starting with, it has to be a fabric that needs to be intrinsically woven into your organization. Everybody from the board down to the newest employee needs to be connecting and understanding what cybersecurity is. We do phishing attacks internally. I get reports every quarter in my team in APAC, how many of them have gone and clicked on bad phishing sites? How many of them have gone and clicked on links which have taken them outside into wrong sites? Because we educate our people. And we expect organizations to start thinking on those lines, because you are as strong as your weakest link in your company. And if you do not fix this, you may have the best technology and the best approach, but these are the areas that you will start getting breached on. Also, the other important thing is it cannot be a point product. It cannot be a point area. You need to have cybersecurity which covers every aspect of your organization, whether it's on the cloud, whether it's at the internet edge, whether it's between devices, whether it's between data center, or whether it's between the overall part of the organization. You need to have cybersecurity covering all parts of it. You need to get the visibility. You need to know what's happening on the network. Once you know what's happening on the network, your organization needs to know how do you analyze it. Because having petabytes of data is not enough when you do not know how to analyze it. And thirdly, you need to take all that data and understand how do you enforce the right policies to make sure you have departments that's blocked out for potential breaches coming in. So if we look at it from a radical different view, you have to say, what's the visibility of everything that's running on your network? So going back to my earlier SLR, that tells you what's running on your network. Basically, you need to reduce your attack life cycle to ensure the potential breaches are as minimal. You need to know every threat that's happening so that gets blocked, which today is possible. And every unknown threat, because keep in mind what an adversary does is he does not go create a new threat for every organization. It's the same one that's created and run again and again and again and again, because eventually 10%, 20%, 50% will fall. So when you have that kind of a situation, how do you take that unknown threat and within minutes convert it into a known threat through policies and signature and make sure everybody is aware about it? That's how you blockade it. So other important things, as I said, it has to be at the network level. You're looking at it from a cloud standpoint. You have to look at it from an endpoint standpoint. End of the day, it's about every aspect of your organization that needs to be covered. I like to leave it with this thought over here because it's all about disruption. A lot of stuff that you've heard from Ben today, from Dr. Trehan. End of the day, technology is evolving. So are the adversaries, so will your cybersecurity be. You cannot have one technology or one product and sit back and say, I'm taken care of for the rest of the life. There'll be a lot of innovation coming in. There'll be new technologies coming out. How do you make sure that gets consumed in terms of what you do? More sharing. Because today when a breach happens, the dark web knows about it. A CIO does not talk to a CIO because he feels it's embarrassing. You need to have more of those sharing coming in. Automation, it's not about throwing human beings. It's about having the technology that can automate the whole process to sync in with what the breaches and the prevention that need to be linked. Needs to be linked back to more and more software because it's all not linked back to just pure play hardware. And then ease of deployment and flexibility of usage because you cannot be hiring PhDs and folks who would be coming in and being cybersecurity professionals in the organization. So with that, just wanted to thank you. We are an organization who are doing this today. And again, as I said, it's not just one company who has to do it. It is all of us together. It is an industry, it's a country, it's a community who has to think about disrupting how cybersecurity needs to be taken into account, because if that doesn't happen, we will continue to be a step behind, and the adversary will continue to be ahead in terms of financial, country threats, or any kind of potential threat that we would see. With that, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. K.P. Unnikrishnan. May I request you to kindly remain on stage for some time? Thank you once again, sir, for that very interesting keynote presentation. I would now like to call Mr. K.K. Mohapatra, Organizing Secretary and Head Infocom, ABB Private Limited, to kindly come forward and present a memento to Mr. K.P. Unnikrishnan. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Mr. K.P. Unnikrishnan for his keynote presentation.